Hello, I'm Benny Powell, the CEO and co-founder of Red Giant Entertainment. When we decided to go public, one of the core principles we wanted to do was to be as transparent as we possibly could. There's so many questions many of you have, and we needed a way to answer you guys and share with you the latest updates outside of the confines of a press release. So, welcome to our very first shareholder video report. During this video, we hope to give you insight into who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we intend to go. So this is intended to be a great resource for current or future investors to refer to as a sort of State of the Union. That isn't to say that there won't be some cool information for readers or fans, so feel free to stick around even if you aren't an investor. You may learn a few secrets and get a sneak peek behind the scenes. First, some company background. The first question, how did Red Giant get started? Well, back in 2009, I began working to try and sell and promote a movie script I'd worked on in my spare time. Amy Schoaf and Eisen Robbins were already on board to help me develop. I was repped by William Morris Endeavor, and my agent suggested I go back to my roots and create a comic book based on the series. I had a better idea. I approached Chris Crosby, CEO of Keenspot.com, about doing a webcomic. I'd known Chris since before he began Keenspot, a site which would grow to become the largest and longest running webcomics portal in the world. And at the time, webcomics were primarily dominated by humor comic strips and mostly those pertaining to video game enthusiasts and pop culture. I, on the other hand, wanted to do a traditional full-page comic set in a sci-fi universe of my movie script. So after finding an art team, we launched Wayward Sons Legends in June of 2010 as the very first ever full-page, full-color webcomic to update daily. While the book was gaining an audience, I decided to try to find ways to monetize the work. So I approached an old friend of mine, David Campetti, who I knew had connections in South America, about doing translated versions for publishers there. I explained to him what I was doing, and while he explained how the South American publishing landscape had changed over the years, he was increasingly interested in what I was doing online and the business model of gaining readers. I told him I would let him know how things progressed. Shortly after this, I attended San Diego Comic-Con in July of 2010 while we were only in our second issue online. The response was tremendous, and by August, we hit our stride. Soon, millions of page views and ad impressions were piling up. In short, Wayward Sons was a hit. David Campetti and I had been talking back and forth quite a bit by this point, and he hit me with a proposal that would change everything. He said, "Benny, I've been thinking about getting back into publishing. Would you be interested in working with me?" My response was concise. Damn it. He asked why I reacted this way, and I told him it was because if anyone but him had asked me, I would say no. We discussed our business plans, and I told him about what would become the Giant Size Line business model. Ideas flowed, and before you knew it, we decided to become full publishers once more. Thus we began to expand the Red Giant line. David Campetti, Chris Crosby, and I all had our various projects and properties we could bring into the fold, but we decided we wanted to do things smart. For starters, we would expand as we could online and only as we could afford, and work towards the books becoming and remaining self-sustaining. We achieved this with our revenue models, and as we gained extra funds, we expanded further. By the time we decided to go public, we had proven our basic concepts. First, we can create an audience for good, quality comic book properties. Second, with this audience, we could monetize through selling advertisements. Third, although the original material is free, the audience would still readily support and consume products such as books for pay. Lastly, with an audience in place, Hollywood and other industries would take notice. That's what led us to where we are now. We now have over 40 properties in development in our library, which we either own, co-own, or have the rights to. Over half of these you can currently read on Keenspot, in fact. We have several movies in various stages of production and development, as well as 2 television deals in place. We have 1 video game being developed and are in active discussions on numerous others. There's a reason I attended E3 last year, this last year. I can't yet divulge what's going on here, but I hope to soon. If it's any indicator, despite wanting to have a bit of fun at E3, I didn't even get to touch a controller or attend a single premiere. I was in back-to-back meetings from open to close each day. It was all business, with even impromptu meetings happening at the line at Starbucks. We will, of course, let you know the instant any further deals arise in these fronts and we're able to speak about them, but things are looking good. The next question, who are the players in Red Giant? Well, Red Giant Entertainment Management Team is a diverse group of highly qualified individuals with a variety of specialized skills, talents, and abilities. Our founding members each bring something unique to the team that complements the group as a whole, truly making the organization a multimedia intellectual property platform. First off, there's me, Benny Powell. I'm the CEO as well as a writer and creator for multiple projects. I started out my career at Marvel Comics, where I was an intern and assistant to editor-in-chief Bob Harris. I was fortunate to work with him, and among my duties were the entire X-Men line of comics, between 9 to 10 monthly titles at any given point. Within my first 2 weeks, I accomplished a feat no intern had ever done before or since in Marvel's history. I broke into Marvel as a writer. This launched my writing career and was a lifelong dream come true. Unfortunately, after several years as a writer, Marvel was experiencing bankruptcy woes. When both of my editors for 2 new greenlit series were fired on the same day, and with a new wife to take care of, I decided to try my hand looking for other avenues of employment. So it was that I soon found myself working for an upstart internet company as the head marketing writer. The company was called Priceline.com. While there, I received perhaps the best education one could ever ask for regarding marketing from the chief marketing officer, and was encouraged to roll up my sleeves and help participate in the company's success. It was a wonderful time that unfortunately ended due to the NASDAQ bubble bursting. Within a couple of weeks, however, I was snatched up by IBM's agency of record, where I became the global advertising writer for the brand. I enjoyed the work and the company, but after a belated honeymoon in Orlando, I grew weary of the Connecticut snow and the gray skies and packed up and moved to Orlando, where I eventually founded my own company, Total Solutions Marketing. Growing it up from my apartment into a 7,000 square foot penthouse office overlooking Universal Studios. We became the largest full-service marketing firm in the region and had great successes, until the 2007 recession cost us all of our clients and forced me to once again reinvent myself. Fortunately, I'd founded Active Media Printing as a side business in 2003 and was able to keep that going. When I began work on Red Giant, I transitioned Active Media into focusing on supporting the comic book community. It is now the highest quality and lowest cost comic book printer in the world. Next, we have David Campetti. A graduate of West Liberty University, he began writing as a child and sold his first writing to the Wheeling News Register while still in college, and to such magazines as Writer's Digest and Comic Buyer's Guide soon after that. In 1982, he moved from his hometown of Wheeling, West Virginia to North Attleboro, Massachusetts, where he worked as a chief copywriter at the L.G. Balfour Company and later on as public relations writer for the United Way of New England. As early as 1982, he began selling comic book writing to Pacific Comics and was first published in 1983. By 1985, David was writing Superman stories in Action Comics for DC and soon went into freelance designing, editing, and book packaging full-time for several years. He helped launch Amazing Comics, Wonder Color Comics, Pied Piper Press, and Eternity Comics, this grouping totaling number 4 in market share. He also helped launch new series productions, both Serious Comics and Prelude Graphics, as well as Malibu Comics, which was later acquired by Marvel. In the process, he discovered and debuted the careers of many talented artists and writers. In 1988, he founded Innovation Corp., known publicly as Innovation Publishing. Under David's control as publisher and editor-in-chief, Innovation became the number 4 in market share, but below only Marvel, DC, and Dark Horse. It brought to promise many literary, film, and TV tie-ins, series, and adaptations such as Anne Rice's The Vampire Lestat, the TV series Beauty and the Beast, Dark Shadows, Lost in Space, Piers Anthony's On a Pale Horse, Quantum Leap, and many others. He was the first editor to publish an authorized Stephen King short story in comics in 25 years. Over the years, David was a creator, writer, or co-writer for hundreds of comic books, often illustrated by the artists that he discovered. In 1993, David resigned from Innovation to launch Glass House Graphics, a professional service firm that provides developmental and organizational services as well as illustrators, writers, painters, and digital designers, where he still holds the position of CEO and Global Talent Supervisor. David has also served as a consulting publisher for Mad Magazine in Brazil and has been a columnist for several publications. Today, in addition to writing, he oversees 2 offices in Brazil, 1 in the Philippines, 1 in India, a new office in Europe, and 2 new locations in Indonesia. He now coordinates creative services for a roster of more than 120 talents worldwide to produce animation, art, and digital graphics for scores of clients. In association with Cutting Edge Productions, he's also a producer on Magica, our animated feature film. What's more, through his Academy of Comic Book Arts, David teaches seminars worldwide on creating comics, graphic novels, manga, and video game work, and has helped shape comic-centric art curriculums at several colleges, art schools, and universities. Red Giant was so important to him that he even moved to Orlando to work on it with me. All told, it's easy to see why I reacted the way I did. There's nobody I would rather have at my side developing a comic book line than David Campetti. This next couple, it's virtually impossible to tell the story of this dynamic duo separately. Amy Schoaf, who's our Chief Business Development Officer, and Eisen Robbins, our Chief Intellectual Property Officer, are accomplished film producers and creative talents. Eisen and Amy co-founded Intrinsic Value Films back in 1998. They have since produced more than 30 feature films in this short period of time. Their films have won many awards, and they've been honored with numerous nominations. Among their film accolades, they won the Sundance Special Grand Jury Prize, 4 Gotham nods, and 5 Independent Spirit nominations. Robbins and Schoaf are currently nominated for the upcoming 2014 Independent Spirit Award. 7 of their films have premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, 4 at Tribeca Film, 3 at SXSW, and 1 at Toronto, Venice, New Directors, New Films, and Berlin, to name a few. Their films have been distributed worldwide and helped launch the careers of numerous actors and actresses who have gone on to become household names. Robbins and Schoaf's grassroots approach to projects is built for the new economic marketplace. They combine their access to talent, directors, and finance, all while controlling costs and reducing risks through the use of tax incentives, debt, and distribution pre-sales to get the job done. Some of their past films include Blue Caprice, starring Isaiah Washington, Tim Blake Nelson, and Joey Lauren Adams; The Alphabet Killer, starring Eliza Dushku, Carrie Ells, and Timothy Hutton; XXXY, starring Mark Ruffalo and Kathleen Robertson; The Skeptic, starring Zoe Saldana, Tom Arnold, and Timothy Daly; Anything But Love, starring Andrew McCarthy; The Hebrew Hammer, starring Judy Greer, Adam Goldberg, Andy Dick, and Mario Van Peebles; and Brother to Brother, starring Anthony Mackie, Daniel Sunjata, and Anjanou Ellis. When we met a few years ago, they came on board to help develop Wayward Sons. Eisen made the mistake of referring to our relationship as like a partnership. Little did he know then, but I took him at that, and that's exactly what it became. Their experience in production, finance, sales, and distribution enables them to operate on all levels of the entertainment business. That's why they are where they are and doing what they do so well. They're the best fit for the jobs they have, and we value them immensely. Rounding out our motley crew, Chris Crosby is our Chief Technology Officer. He and I have perhaps the longest history together, although it's not what you might think. Early in my career at Marvel, I did a lot of work on AOL and hung out in similar internet service providers' professional comic creator chat rooms. It was here that a young Chris Crosby would often ask me and the other pros questions and got to know us. Little did any of us know that this kid would one day become such a prominent figure in the comics community. Crosby began drawing comics shortly after learning they existed. By the age of 16 in 1993, he was creating and publishing his own printed comic books professionally through Diamond Comics under the Super Crew Comics label and later as Blatant Comics, launching the hit black and white superhero title Scorn and a line of parody titles. In 1994, he became one of the first creators to step into the new world of online comics, uploading electronic files to dial-up service CompuServe. As the internet emerged, Crosby moved his comics to a dedicated website. In 1997, he was commissioned by AnotherUniverse.com to create a weekly online comic, Snap the Punk Turtle, for their popular digital magazine. Inspired by the positive reaction he received from Snap, in March 1999, Crosby launched one of the first daily online exclusive comic strips, Superosity. The comic attracted a small but rabid cult following and still publishes a new installment every day, adding to a massive archive of over 5,000 strips. In March 2000, teaming with a small band of fellow webcomics creators, Crosby co-founded premier webcomics portal KeenSpot and initially served as its co-CEO. He helped KeenSpot grow its lineup of comics to more than 50 exclusive titles, ultimately generating more than 12 billion page views. In June 2000, KeenSpot launched ComicGenesis.com, an all-inclusive free web hosting site for aspiring comic creators. ComicGenesis.com expanded like a wildfire to include over 10,000 different comic properties by amateur creators, many of whom went on to become some of the biggest stars in webcomics. Comics Genesis has since been acquired by Red Giant Entertainment. As Crosby ran KeenSpot, becoming its sole CEO in 2008, he continued to create many new comics, including the gaming-focused comics Sore Thumbs and God Mode, the kid-friendly superheroine series The First Daughter, sponsored sci-fi series Wicked Powered, and the creature feature Crow Scare. In 2006, he teamed with his younger brother Bobby and frequent collaborator Owen Janney to create the high-concept horror series Last Blood, which exploded in popularity and attracted nearly 20 million readers worldwide. The action-packed story follows a group of vampires determined to protect the last surviving humans after a zombie apocalypse. Red Giant is producing the film adaptation and has attached Simon Hunter of the movie Mutant Chronicles to direct it. As KeenSpot's CEO, he's in charge of handling the digital distribution of all the Red Giant Entertainment titles, and Chris Crosby provides a valuable revenue stream to Red Giant by posting his comics online across KeenSpot's network of over 2.5 million unique monthly visitors. Thus, this student-turned-master was our natural choice to handle our vital webcomics lineup, development, and all things digital. So, the next question is, how do you guys make money? Well, there are three main ways we currently make money, and more profit centers on the way. The current profit centers are advertising sales, creative services, and book sales. Advertising sales is made on our webcomics and handled by our strategic partner and host KeenSpot. There are a number of ways this happens. Either they sell direct to select advertisers for paid positioning, offer exclusive sponsorship for comics, or they use a chain of ad networks such as Google, with the highest bidder winning the spots throughout the network. Advertising is paid out net 30 through this way. The acquisition of Comic Genesis has doubled our overall ad impressions, and once we finish the overhaul of the site designs, we expect to greatly enhance this mechanism for producing revenue. Of course, as we move into the giant size line next year, advertising will become an even bigger component of our revenue. More on that later in the video. The next pillar of revenue is our creative services division. One of the nice things about having creative talent is our ability to monetize this resource. It is very cost effective and highly lucrative to offer our services to other businesses. For example, the movie Shockwave Darkside contracted our services to create 2 issues to build a groundswell for their upcoming feature film. This comic, which was presented in both 2D and 3D versions, was a great endeavor and paved the way for many such deals to follow. Whether it be for marketing efforts or for movie producers, we have proven talent that can build compelling content that generates eyeballs and subsequently fans. Lastly, book sales is an obvious revenue stream, although more and more this is becoming a misnomer as we have begun to expand into other merchandise such as t-shirts, as well as many of our books sales coming from digital sources. In the past, we sold our books either direct at conventions, through stores directly, through distributors such as Diamond, through Amazon, and straight to consumers through our website. Now we've entered into an exclusive book and comic book store arrangement with Diamond. They're taking on more of these roles as well as expanding our presence internationally in the process. One of our key expansions through Diamond will be to target the library and school markets. Books such as Medusa's Daughter will have great penetration in these markets, while Wayward Sons, with its unique method of inspiring interest in classic literature and history, should do quite well also. Digitally, we sell through Comixology and iVerse's comics apps. We have had great success in these areas, with our first issues consistently being more popular than titles such as Walking Dead or even Superman when they debut. Exposure's #1 issue, for instance, stayed in the top 10 download spot for over a month on Comixology. There are huge changes in store for our online store as well. We expect a major shift to be announced soon, so stay tuned. Moving forward, we expect to add revenue streams from licensing, merchandising, and production as well. More on this as it develops. Next, we have several questions regarding investing. In general, I don't like to talk about this subject much. I try to be overly compliant when it comes to the SEC and FINRA oversight. This is why having Kurt Divich as our IR/PR point person is so crucial. The fact is, I value each and every one of you, all of our investors, greatly. And having someone who can accurately communicate and spend the proper time with you guys when you call is so vital. Next question. Why were the financials late? Well, 2013 was a complex year. We began the year working with Cassmore, our legacy company's old auditing firm, who are based out of Washington State. We decided to change over to a more local auditing firm, and this required us to essentially add a second layer of scrutiny to the mix. Having your year-end financials reviewed by one firm can be an exhaustive process. 2 is even more complex. Despite this, we're very pleased with our auditing teams. Both did a tremendous job, and we feel confident moving forward with our current auditing team. They understand who we are and what we're doing, and being closer, they can make things like their visits to inspect our inventory much easier. We now have better processes and practices in place and expect no further delayed filings moving forward. Next question. Why would Benny purchase shares in 100 share blocks? I'm sure there's a logical explanation, but I can't figure it out. Does it have to do with the buyback? No, my personal buying has nothing to do with the buyback campaign. However, there are certainly strategies in place. The most obvious one is that I believe in my own company. When I have a few thousand to play with, I simply open a TD Ameritrade account, which gives me 60 days of trading for free without any fees. Using that, I buy what I can while it's still cheap. As for why I buy sometimes 100 share blocks, well, sometimes I'm testing the level 2 in order to see if the seller is putting up multiple blocks of 10,000. Since I have no fees to worry about, this works. That's just one reason, but it's a good example. In case you're wondering, I have more than doubled my shares value at the time that I'm recording this. So what I'm doing works for me. What I will say is this is not a stunt in any way. We did not promote that I'm buying shares at all. There was no campaign to trumpet this fact. It only come out simply because of the filings. When I found out that I could buy my own shares without problems, I jumped in and did just that because I believe in the value of my company. Which leads me to the next question. Are you selling your stock, Benny? No, I'm not currently selling any shares I own in the company, nor have any of the board members. We have not, as of yet, requested a legal opinion letter, nor deposited any shares with any broker. All of us are restricted by Rule 144, and even the new shares I personally acquired through TD Ameritrade are restricted from selling until I get a legal opinion letter. For the record, I have been eligible to sell my shares, had I wanted, since last January 2013. But I've chosen not to. Why? Because in my sole opinion, it would be incredibly painful to part with any shares below $1, if even then. To me, even our highs in the 20-cent range were too low for me to consider selling. That being said, might I sell in the future? Never say never. I just don't plan to unless I have to for some unforeseen personal reasons. And even then, I'll be restricted in how I conduct sales. I know what we're doing and where we're going. I firmly believe we will reach these goals and surpass them. So when I see a share selling at a penny or less, I've grabbed every one I could afford. Next question. Why do you put out fluff PR pieces? This is an interesting question because it assumes we have put out fluff news. The reality is we haven't. This misconception stems from the point of view of the audience. See, most of you are likely used to PR being directed for the purpose of building interest for investors. While we do love and appreciate our investors, that is not the focus of our business or marketing efforts. Most of what investors might deem as fluff pieces are actually not intended for investors at all, other than to keep you guys informed of our continued work. The real targets for these pieces are distributors, retailers, licensing companies, and most importantly, advertisers. When we announced, for instance, the addition of new creators or sneak peeks of upcoming comics, this isn't meant to inspire investment dollars. It's to let retailers and advertisers know the quality of our upcoming work. So when we approach XYZ video game company and they do their due diligence, they see who we are and what we're up to. We don't ever put out news for the sake of putting out news. This may sometimes frustrate you guys, as it did when we didn't put out news for a little while there. But this was because we were busy making deals, like the recent Diamond announcement, a reality. With everything now in place on various fronts, however, we expect there will be a continuous stream of news in the weeks and months ahead. Next question. Is this a hobby business for the board? Wow. This is the most time-consuming hobby I've ever had, if it is. Frankly, I know I work 20-hour days almost every day, Monday through Sunday. I have to make extreme efforts to spend time with my kids when I get them for the weekend. And I certainly haven't had time to play video games or even write as much as I'd like. So, no, this isn't a hobby. That being said, I love what we're doing, and I know the rest of the board feels the same way. This is our passion and occupies almost all of our waking hours. We've accomplished amazing things in a short period of time in a business that many of our peers approach as a loss leader industry. We're growing where others are contracting, shrinking, or fading away. And best of all, like the proverbial pebble in the pond, we hope that we can change the tide and fortunes for our entire industry. Next up are some questions pertaining to our comic books. Comics are one of our core competencies and a cornerstone of our intellectual property development. If you take a look at movies, for instance, there's no genre more profitable than comic book adaptations. Worldwide, the top 50 have made over $21 billion in box office revenue, with an average of over $410 million each. The lowest among these 50 made over $160 million. There are only a little more than 10 comic book adaptation films to date, and domestic totals for all clocked in over $12.5 billion, with an average over $106 million. In short, comic intellectual properties are the hottest ticket in town, and we're poised to capitalize on this like few others can. The fact is, Marvel is owned by Disney, while DC is owned by Warner Brothers. Combined, these two account for over 75% of the total current comic book marketplace. That means that the two biggest players in town are all locked up. Outside of Walking Dead, the vast majority of other comics are lucky to break 10,000 units monthly. We've seen a few of these attempting to make it big in movies, and they're more misses than hits. That's why we focus on building massive audiences. Right now, we reach millions, not thousands, worldwide with our webcomics. And with the addition of our million-a-week giant-size line of comics, we will be the largest circulation print publisher as well. And the industry is well aware of this fact. Next question. Can you explain how Free Comic Book Day makes the company money? Well, there are numerous reasons behind us participating in Free Comic Book Day. First and foremost, Free Comic Book Day is the single largest national event for comics at retailers across the country. That means a massive amount of readers who normally would not even enter comic shops who would be able to get copies of our comics. In those comics, they will discover that they can return to these very same shops in a couple months to continue reading our ongoing adventures for free. This is an opportunity we simply couldn't pass up. Further, we need the retailers to understand what it is that we're doing. We need them to be excited about our business model and get on board with promoting our line, thereby promoting themselves in the process. Trying to explain a completely new concept is always a difficult proposition, but since what we're doing is similar in some aspects to Free Comic Book Day, only every week, why not introduce ourselves to the retailers during Free Comic Book Day as well? Next, this also gives us an opportunity to work with Diamond and our supply chain to get the kinks out of our production system on a smaller scale before we launch with the full massive million comics a week line. It's our pilot program in this regard, so we don't lose out on the main event. And finally, we can introduce advertisers to our products as well. We hope to be able to offset the costs entirely and possibly even turn a profit if we can sell some space in time. Next question, and this is the big one. How does the giant size line make the company money? This is perhaps our least understood aspect of our business. It's actually the most exciting. The giant size line of comics will consist of 4 main books and a 5th book that comes out quarterly. Each book will come out on a monthly basis with 1 book for each week, with a circulation of 1 million copies every Wednesday. So to better explain, that means that on the first week of a month, we will distribute giant size action. Second week, will ship giant-sized fantasy. Third week, giant-sized adventure. Fourth week, giant-sized thrills. And on those months with a fifth Wednesday, giant-sized quarterly will ship. Each book will contain 2 titles in them, consisting of a lead title with 20 pages and a backup feature of 14 pages for a total of 34 pages of story. Each book will be completely free to the retail locations that distribute them, as well as free to consumers. We encourage our retailers to use the books as a free with purchase product, but that policy is set on the retail level. We encourage this as it leads to better consumers for them and our advertisers, which is, of course, the first way we make money on this line. Each book will contain up to 36 pages of advertising space which we can sell. While this is a large ratio of content to add for a traditional comic, most traditional comic books are half the size and now cost an average of almost $4 each. Our experience in offering free content online supported by advertising has proven that our readers will accept this trade-off without complaint. So what kind of revenue can this mean? First, we don't like to give projections, and that isn't what I will do here. Also, we aren't yet ready to officially announce our ad rates to the public, but we can look at some of our peers' recent rates to explain how this revenue works. So let's look at a hypothetical scenario using a typical rate for a Marvel or DC comic. Their rates start at around $35 CPM for their full page, while a back cover might cost $45 CPM. But for the purpose of our math, let's just use $35 for our CPM. Now, what is CPM? In advertising lingo, it stands for cost per thousand. The M stands for 1,000 in Roman numerals. So let's say they had books like ours over there. And at 1 million circulation, that would be $35 times 1,000. So $35,000 per full page advertisement. Now let's say they were selling 36 ads per book. That would amount to $1,260,000 in revenue for the entire book. Now you multiply that times 52 weeks, and they would have an annual revenue of over $65.5 million. Now, there are factors such as premium spots that like double page spreads, covers, back covers, gatefolds, and things like this that can make that rate go up. And there are also things like bulk frequencies and other discounts that may lower these rates. But all told, this should explain how the advertising works, as well as give a glimpse at the very real potential in math for comic book companies of this magnitude. And that's not the only revenue stream that the giant size line will provide. Another revenue stream will be digital versions of the comics. See, the print distribution will have built-in scarcity. With a planned average of only 150 copies per location, that means readers may miss issues in the series. So the plan is, after a week of them being in stores, by which time they're most likely gone, readers can then go to a digital provider, such as like a Comixology or iVerse, to purchase the comics. Further revenue is that within a few weeks after that, webcomic versions will begin appearing online, where we can make further advertising revenue based on the web impressions while reaching a global audience and expanding our brand. Lastly, once we get enough issues completed of any given series, and remember we have 8 to 10 series each month, we compile them together and retail the graphic novel version to stores for around $15 to $20 each. We've seen that despite our current webcomics being free to read online, our consumers still purchase the collected volumes readily. Further, the comic industry typically does this on all of their books as well. These collected volumes also can be sold internationally. Quick math on how this works. If a book retails for $20, the distributor gives us 40% of this, or $8. So a book selling 20,000 units would be worth $160,000 in revenue. We could reasonably expect to produce 2 graphic novels a year for each of our series, so a total of 16 books annually from the giant size line could easily be reached. If a company were to do these types of numbers, they would see an additional $2.5 million in revenue. Future plans for expansion will include international reprints in local languages, as our recent announced development partnership with Boom would attest. Next question. Why would advertisers want to advertise in your comics? The short answer is for the same reasons they advertise in our comics online. We provide a massive audience for consumers with the demographics that they wish to reach. The longer answer is to explain that not only do we provide valuable print advertising and digital opportunities, but I personally believe the best printing advertising bang for the buck, period. Comics in general, I feel, are the best ad buy inherently. If you take a moment to think about how you read a typical magazine, you skip around, you read only the articles that interest you. So the odds of any reader ever seeing a particular ad in a magazine are very slim. Yet, with a comic book, because it's a sequential story, it gets read and even reread cover to cover. That means not only will each reader see every single advertisement in our books, they will often generate repeated impressions over time. Add to this that comics are, by their nature, collectible, and the value of these print ads increase drastically with the longevity that they provide. We've all been conditioned not to throw away comics by now. Meanwhile, our magazine and newspaper cousins readily find their way into the recycle bin without even a whimper of protest. Lastly, and most important of all, being a comic book reader is in. Thanks to the movie business and shows like The Big Bang Theory, it's never been more popular to be seen as a comics reader. The stigma of being an outcast or loser is gone, and now geek is chic. This has appealed to any advertiser who wants to reach an affluent and intelligent consumer base. In short, nearly any advertiser is a potential advertiser. Next question. Why don't other companies do what you're doing? Aha. See, this is our secret sauce. You see, they can't. Not unless they want to lose money. We, on the other hand, are uniquely positioned to profit where they wouldn't through several key factors. First, we have an incredibly low overhead. Having our production facilities that aren't based out of New York or LA is just one of the many cost-saving factors our peers don't have. Free simply wouldn't work for them. Next, and perhaps the most important factor, is that I am personally the owner of Active Media Printing. As such, I've granted Red Giant a contract for near-cost printing. Active Media is already the lowest cost printer of comics in the world, so this is a tremendous savings on top of that. This is an exclusive agreement I offer to Red Giant, of course, and therefore can't be matched. And lastly, what we're doing only needs to be done by us. You see, the rest of the industry doesn't compete with us. If you notice, I never call them our competitors, but instead our peers. The reason being, we do not want to hurt or harm any of them, but instead help. Our business model allows us to wear the white hat and ride the white horse. In other words, when we do our job right, the rest of the comic publishers benefit. You see, by us increasing our own readers, we're doing so by drawing in millions of new readers into the world of comic shops and reading print comics in general. This increases readership not just for us, but for the entire industry. So, our peers therefore have no need to try and duplicate what we're doing. They already benefit. It's truly an everyone wins scenario, and those are the best businesses to be in after all. So, next question, why do webcomics? Well, webcomics are a wonderful revenue stream, but more importantly, a cheap medium to reach and grow a global audience. We plan to continue to support the medium and see it as a way to expand our lineup of intellectual property. We want to find new ways to monetize and streamline this process, and there's some really big plans in store here, so we urge everyone to stay tuned for many more announcements to come. Next question. Are there plans in the future to continue growing your free giant-sized comics? I think super-sized comics is the next logical step unless McDonald's has a patent on the phrase. Yes, I realize the person asking this was being silly, but there's a good question here. Are we looking to expand the line? Actually, there are some possible plans in the works. A business should always know if and when they might expand, and we're no different. But first, let's crawl before we walk or run here. And as for why we call ourselves giant size line, there's even a good explanation here. For decades, the term giant size has been used to refer to comics with more than the standard number of pages. A typical comic book is between 24 and 32 pages. Ours will be around 68 pages plus cover. So as we were describing the comic, we kept using that phrase. Suddenly, we realized one day that's a great name for the line. After all, we're Red Giant. Also, we wanted to have the titles of the comics in the line follow certain themes, while having a sort of uniformity to how they were presented. This way, if perhaps one of the books, like, say, Tesla, in giant size action, were to become popular enough, we could spin it out as a pay book series with a built-in audience and replace its spot in giant size action without damaging the name of the comic or the line or confusing readers. Next up, film and TV. Film and TV are easily the sexiest sections of our business. It's one where we're having great movement and momentum and early successes in developing. So let's dive in. First question is, what is the status of Last Blood film? Do we still have Simon Hunter attached, and when will it come out? Last Blood is moving along quite nicely. Yes, we still have Simon Hunter attached, and nothing has changed in that regard. In fact, he's taken numerous trips to America to meet with various parties to pull everything together. As for where we are, let me first step back and give a little behind-the-scenes info on how movies get made. There are several factors that have to come together to get any movie made. They are finance, script, director, producers, actors, effects people, post-production, and then finally distribution. While each of these factors are separate, they all are dependent on each other. For instance, without the right directors or actors, it affects the kind of distribution you might get. Without the right script, you lose actors or directors. Without the right effects and production in place, the thing will look silly and fall apart, etc., etc., etc. In other words, it isn't simply putting a puzzle together. It's more like Jenga, where moving one component could threaten to topple the whole thing if you're not careful. That's why we have Amy and Eisen on board. The skill of good producers like them and our other producing partners is their ability to navigate these treacherous building efforts, and their track record speaks volumes. They don't say they make films, they make films. And once they're done, they're beautiful. They're beautiful towers that reach the sky. So with Last Blood, we have in place most of the components, but we're in the delicate negotiation phase with the lead acting talent. This is a tug of war between satisfying all of the parties and getting the right people for the job. This isn't a studio film, and this part of the process can be exhausting. But once completed, we're off to the races. Most films never reach this point, so rest assured, all is proceeding beautifully, and while we certainly wish we could be further along, we're ahead of the curve as far as this thing goes. So when, not if, it comes out, it's going to be amazing. Next question. How does REDG benefit from Blue Caprice? Blue Caprice we're currently working with to help develop and launch a new online webcomic series and subsequent true crime graphic novel line. It's a compelling story and one that has a lot more story to tell in a genre we haven't tackled yet. Now, what needs to be understood is this is the perfect example of how Red Giant is different in the marketplace. You see, most comic book companies would pay for the rights in what's called a licensing deal to do comics based on any given property. We don't do typical licensing deals. A licensing deal requires us to put money up front and guarantees, and then ultimately has little value to the company selling the license beyond a monetary one. While the comic book company, us, would benefit from the built-in audience, but little more than that. So we don't pay licensing fees, but instead we partner with companies and creators on the comic. That means the final product has more value to both of us and affords us the opportunity to expand their franchise and our own. It's a win-win scenario that everyone makes money on, as well as more opportunities from. Next question, what is the status of Wayward Sons movie? Well, the Wayward Sons movie is coming up on some exciting developments. I'm personally so amazed and excited here, but unfortunately can't say more. All I can say is please, please, please stay tuned, as we will have some really cool announcements very shortly. Next question, when will Magica come out? Magica is undergoing some post-production edits based on the feedback we received. We're working with a unique distribution model to put into place as well. Magica is even set to be one of the titles in our Giant Size line of books as a feature in Giant Size Adventure. So it'll be completely supported. This is not only moving forward, this movie is not only moving forward, but it'll be one of the cornerstones of what we hope to be our animated line. So there are some innovative things happening here I can't yet discuss, but rest assured, it's going to be so cool and profitable. Innovation, however, takes some time, so we appreciate everyone's patience and look for more on this soon. Now, we said we'd answer any questions you had, so we kept even the silly ones. Obviously, someone wanted to be insulting for whatever reason, and these questions, I'm just going to read them as follows. How long are you grounded from your computer for looking at anime? Are you paying your mother rent, or is she still claiming you as a dependent? Would you consider having an investor pajama party next time you want to get into info out to us? How much advance notice do you give your mother? To answer these questions, honestly, I've not lived with my parents since I left for college well over 2 decades ago. I buried my father back in 1999, and my mom passed away just a couple months ago. I did not make a big deal about this, as I never wanted to allow my personal life to affect my business. My partners and I take this business very seriously. This is our profession, and it far exceeds a full-time one, as I stated before. While what we do may seem fun, it is a lot of work, and we're dedicated to doing the very best job for our company, our readers, and ultimately for you as well. There's not a single day that goes by where we aren't hard at work on developing the future of this business. Last silly question, PS4 or Xbox One? Xbox One, of course. Although I haven't had time to play any games, sadly, I primarily use it as a media server and listen to TV in the background while I work. I'll probably get a PS4, though, when the price drops for my kids. Final questions. What are you most excited about at Red Giant? Well, obviously the Giant Size line is the easy answer here. This really isn't just a game changer, but it's a paradigm shift for the entire industry. For decades, comic readers have been dwindling due to lack of infusion of new readers on an ongoing basis. We get to change that. That's some truly amazing stuff. The last question, what are some of your goals for the new year and what do you hope to accomplish? Well, we're already have the largest readership of comic books online, and our giant size line will give us the largest circulation in print as well. That's an amazing achievement for us and one that we'll be proud of. San Diego Comic-Con and E3 were amazing opportunities for us, and the contacts and many of the opportunities that are coming out of those meetings are still to be announced. The recent Diamond revelation is just one of many. There are truly some gigantic ones on the way. We hope you guys are as excited as we are and stick around because 2014 will be a banner year and there are so many wonderful things in store. As we like to say here, the sky isn't the limit, it's our starting point, upward and onward.